Well, welcome everyone to this already third webinar on Transkribus with some updates, especially on Pylaia, as that is one of the biggest new features that has been introduced into Transkribus. So I'm going to talk about Pylaia. There are some developments in the layout analysis and the table making. I will also show you how to remove small regions if you have noise on the page. I will show you how to create sample sets, and there are a few other small updates that I want to show you, as I haven't shown them in earlier webinars, or because they are very, very recent. So on Pylaia, that's probably why most of you are here to learn about Pylaia. And I'm going to take you step by step through it. I'm not an expert on machine learning. In fact, I don't know anything about it except for using Transkribus and that it is something that's in the background. I'm just going to take you through the steps that are necessary. And if you're an expert on machine learning, you can obviously learn way more if you look at the GitHub repository. HDR, keep in mind that that stands for handwriting text recognition. And from that, there are several techniques within Transkribus that are being used and are being developed. And they have confusing enough similar names. So you have the original HDR tool for the recurrent neural networks to recognize handwriting. That has been improved on, and it was created by Planet in Germany, and they licensed that to Transkribus. This tool, I've been told, will be phased out in the next year and will be replaced by IDA, which will be faster than HDR plus, but it has the similar kind of background. And then there is this new tool called Pylaia, which is an open source tool created by the University of Valencia, and there's no license, and that's the explanation why within the price model you see that the pages you process through Pylaia are cheaper. So what does it do and what does it not do? Well, first of all, if you have pages that are curved, then HDR plus, so the original tool that you have likely been working with, works better. There are plans to improve this in Pylaia, but that's not at this moment. Pylaia models cannot work with text to image, so for that you will need the HDR plus models. If you want to connect your original transcription to the image, then you need the HDR plus. So that's not working with Pylaia, so keep that in mind. Pylaia itself is based on PyTorch, which is a machine learning library kind of tool, and that's where my knowledge on PyTorch stops. Well, the benefits of Pylaia are that you can adjust more parameters, so you have more possibilities to change things. That is, if you're familiar with machine learning. You still need the same amount of pages, so it's about 50 to 70 approximately if you are working with creating an entirely new model. And if you are using a base model, it's about 30 to 40, something like that. So at least 1,000 lines. Within Pylaia, pre-processing is rather important, and I'll come back to that in a bit when I'm showing all the parameters. What you can do in Pylaia, which is not possible or less possible within HDR plus, is working with abbreviations. So what you do in when you are thinking about using a Pylaia model or applying that is that you first write down the abbreviation as it is in your original photo, then you add a $sign, and then you add the full text of what it should have been in the abbreviation. It currently says the $sign, That will change because obviously this would be a disadvantage for American users who use the $sign in tables or within text. So a new sign will be figured out to put between the abbreviation and the full text. But that will be announced, I hope, rather soon. They haven't figured out which sign to plant there yet. So Pylaia can do word coordinate exports, which might be interesting if you want to export your text and your transcription images in combination to post it as IIIF on a website. So in case you're already searching for the button on Pylaia in your Transkribus, I will need to tell you that you need to request the button through the well-known email address of info@readcoop.eu, and they are more than happy to get you the button. Again, just like HDR+, this button isn't standard in your toolset simply because not everyone is using the option. And maybe also because it's quite, it requires a little bit of thinking what you need to do with all the parameters to get it working. So when you have your tool tab, your well-known tool tab, where you also do the layout analysis and the text recognition, you are focusing again on this little bit for text recognition. And in my screen, you already see that I have a method HDR, which is SitLab HDR Plus, and also Pylaia. You have obviously the model button and the training button, and I'll explain each of them again in a little bit. If you choose the model button, you can look at which models are available either in your collection, publicly available, and you can also select the technology. So here I've selected the public models and I've clicked on Pylaia, and you see that there are currently only 3 models available within Pylaia. That's mainly has to do with that it is a new technique and that not everyone has yet trained their models in Pylaia. What is interesting is that you can obviously compare your models between HDR Plus and Pylaia, and they do not differ that much in the quality. That is, one of my models was a handwritten text, but it had curved pages, so that did not work as well as in HDR Plus, but that's something that will be improved. But my printed models showed actually no noticeable difference between the techniques. That is, they had a 0.02% difference or something like that. And apparently, I was told that this was caused that HDR Plus might, in some cases, just take a little bit of the information on the validation set along with the training. But that's something I'm not entirely sure of. But the differences shouldn't be too big between the two types of techniques. So Pylaia and HDR Plus are generally doing similar things, at least in the output, but they also produce nearly the same results. So you can select the technology and you can then see which models are publicly available. Obviously, if you click on the collection and you're just looking into your own collection, you can figure out which ones you created yourself with the Pylaia technique. Then if you go to the training button, you get this whole screen, and you normally have these 2 buttons, one on HDR and one on HDR Plus. When you have the new button available, you have the Pylaia button there. And there are a lot of options, as you can already see. There are many more parameters and things to fill out here. So I'm just going over them. one of the things that you all know is that you have this set of your documents that is available in the specific collection that you're working on. So you can click on the little arrow and you can select the pages you want in your training set and your validation set. Still, with Pylaia, you do 90% of your training material of your material in the training set and 10% in the validation set. So here you have, well, obviously you fill out the model name, you fill out the language, and you give a bit of a description. So that's standard. Here with the button or the option image type, you can choose between originals. That's the type you uploaded up to the server, or the compressed version. The compressed version is what you normally see when you open your screen in Transkribus and you see the image of your page. So there has been done a little bit of compression. You can choose to work with the originals, but if you see that it's taking way too long and it's well, it's taking and taking and taking before training starts, or even if the interval between the sessions or the epochs is taking very long, then you can stop the training and click here and click on the arrow, and you will be able to change it to the compressed version. So keep in mind that you can do that to speed up the process, and it hasn't that much influence on the results. So it's something you probably like to do if you want to have rather fast results. So here the number of epochs is similar as in HDR+. You can make it higher, lower, depending on how your graph looks like. And there is an early stopping option. This early stopping option means that if the learning rate, what you have here as a number, if the difference between the epochs is not bigger than that number, or rather, if that's too close to that number, it will stop. So if there's little improvement in the model, the computer system will say, well, this has no use, we'll stop. You see that happens in this case in 20 times after it started. So your chances are that the system will stop and that your model is ready by then. If this stops too quickly, you can change the learning rate, or you can change the early stopping. But you should take into account that this number hasn't been set there for nothing. At first, so do look at the graph. If there is no change, for if you are using too small number of pages, then you should add some pages. And just I just got a correction here from the expert on HDR+, that HDR and HDR+ do not use the validation set, and Pylaia does use the validation set. So don't be shy on putting very useful pages in the validation set. So thank you for that. Here we have the learning rate, and that's the difference, the worth between each of the steps in the training. So if you go from one of the epochs to the next epoch, then there is this calculation between how much it improved. If this number is too big, the character error rate will drop too quickly, but that means that it's less accurate. So you can leave it at default. So this number that you see in your screen when you open up Pylaia, if you're not experienced with changing this, obviously you can fiddle around with it, but then try to lower the amount of epochs just to not bother the system too much. So that's the learning rate. Then we have advanced parameters, and there are a lot of them, and I'm sorry to bother you with all of these little buttons and options, but since this is a very convenient medium to relay this knowledge, you can always look back later on. So here we have the pre-processing, and the pre-processing is for Pylaia very important. Deslope means that that you want to accept a larger variety with baselines. So in case it's not entirely straight lines, you need to have this this box ticked. This land means that is something that you need to tick when you're working with written text, but if you're working with printed text, please untick the box, because that will just slow down the system, and it's something not necessary for printed text. Stretching is necessary if you have texts that are written extremely tight together, so then you need to tick the box. If you have texts that are filled out nicely over the page and not really crammed into the page, then just untick the box. These things will slow down the system, so if you don't need them, don't use them. And there's this enhancement field, which means that there is a sort of box going over the page, and it will sort of reduce the noise. So if you have very white pages, you don't need to use that. Then you have the enhance window box. So that's the box that is going over the page to improve the text, and you can make that the size of the box bigger or smaller, and then it basically levels out the differences for a larger field or a smaller field, so it has less or more to compare with. And then you have the Savola enhancement parameters. Don't touch that one. It has to do with special algorithms, and unless you know a lot about these kind of things, you can fiddle around with it, but I got the instructions that it's not something to fiddle around with. Then we have the line height. This is measured in pixels, so this is standardly set on 64. And it means that it's measured based on where the baseline is and how much text above it will be looked at. If you have very long characters, then you can change it to 100. If you happen to get an out of memory error, you need to change the batch size to a lower number. The smaller this number is, the slower the training will get. And in one of the next versions of Pylaia within Transkribus, the batch size will be automatically matched to the line height. So then you have the line height measured in X. And then it concerns the descenders and the transcenders. So if the text happens to be a little bit below the baseline, a little bit above it, then it just measures the number of pixels, and it doesn't measure from the baseline upwards. If you choose a number here, then the line height, the one we just discussed above it, the 64 one, is being ignored. Then we have the moment normalization, the feature parallelogram, the features surrounding polygon, and the features surrounding polygon dilate. These should just be ignored. You need to leave the ticked boxes on, and you don't fill in a number in the polygon dilate. Then we have the left-right padding, which means that it looks to the side of the line, and it means that it shouldn't cut off too soon. Otherwise, you might be missing a little bit of the line, so it's looking sideways. And the maximum width is measured at 6,000 pixels, which is a very large number. But in case you are working with huge papers, well, I once saw a document which was the size of a table, then you might need to change this number to a much higher number, because otherwise, well, it will cut off at 6,000 pixels. But otherwise, you don't need to touch it. So then we have the section on model, which has a lot of parameters, but are only useful if you know a little bit, or rather a lot, given the number of choices here on machine learning. And it has to do with the modifications you could make to the neural networks. So this is something advanced that I have no clue about. But if you know a lot about machine learning, go and have fun with this bit. Then we have the training set. There's the batch size. That's the number of pages that is being processed at once on the server. So this one has been set on 24 pages per time. And the one other thing that I can be telling you about this section is the use distortions. That means that if you have the value true, then you allow the computer to here and there change this, rotate the page, because sometimes you have text that is in a different direction, or because it's just a little bit tilted, and that makes the model more stable. If you have printed text, very regular handwriting, or very good quality scans because you're working at an archive and you're sending everything to a professional scanner or whatever, then you should change this value from true to false, because it's not necessary to, well, basically tilt the page or whatever. So then you just click on true and you replace it by typing in false. So what you obviously, we can work again with a base model. Base model means that you are using an existing model to boost your own model. Unfortunately, you can only use printed models at this point in time, because those are the only ones that are publicly available. But I do hope that other models will be available very soon. And obviously, you can use your own created Pylaia models and base models. Do note that you cannot use an HDR or an HDR plus model for a base model. So if you have been building your models upon models, you will need to do that same thing and that same process within Pylaia. And I understand that might be a bit of a pain if you have a very good HDR model, but you're facing the higher price to use HDR plus, and you want to use Pylaia, then yes, you will need to go through that whole process again. You can use public models, obviously, but also your own collection models. What might be interesting, and apparently some people kind of would like to know about this, is that instead of selecting a document, you can also select the training data you had on a previous model. So here I've selected Pylaia again, and I've clicked on Dutch Roman type, and then if you click on the arrow, you have this fold out menu, and you can click on the training set and the validation set. And if you click on the training set, you can immediately move the whole batch of, in this case, if I were to do that, I would place 186 pages into the training set. So I can just click on the whole folder, click on training, and it appears here. If I would do that for the validation set, same thing. And with that, you can use the existing data you already had on a certain model for your next model, instead of using it as a base model. Why would you do that? Simply because it just doesn't, a base model boosts your model, but if you want to create a new model, because you want to combine models or something, you could just add the training data without having to select every single page again for your next model. So just like with HDR plus, this just works with Pylaia, or if it works for Pylaia, this works for HDR plus as well, simply because you can also do this with an HDR or an HDR plus model, select those pages and create the Pylaia model. So you can choose between recreating a whole new model and creating a model with a base model. You can never merge two models. So you either have to choose one of these options. Then there are a few small. Are there any questions related to Pylaia so far? If so, just add them to the chat. And I'm fully aware that you might need to look this bit over and over again. So the slides will be available through Zenodo, and also the video will be available soon. No questions on Pylaia this far? Cool. With tables, there are a few little bits I can tell you. There's a lot of improvement going on. Oh, yes. Any tips on measuring the height of the line? No, I would just think about comparing it. Comparing it to just give it a try, and when you click on the line, you can actually see where it's where the polygons are. If the polygons are too close to your baseline and you are missing out a bit on the text, you should higher the number. If it's fine, then just leave it at this. They didn't think of this number for nothing. So this, as a default, it should work. If you have someone writing with a very, well, broad pen, then just adjust the number. But anything between 64 and 100 should definitely work. So that's, and technically you could probably measure the pixels, but I have no idea. And apparently you can count that with a tool called GIMP, and then add a little bit because of probable variation. Thank you for that. And if a document has different line heights, like the title page with line heights and the normal lines inside, I would think that you should figure out an average, because if you put in a line height too high, then you would end up taking two lines at the same time, which you don't want to. So maybe leave out the title page if you want to create a model, because if it's that different in style, then you might need to well, you might need to figure a way around those style differences. So here then we go on to the tables and the adjustment of layout analysis. It's something that functions for both of them. Tables are being improved rapidly, and it's easier to draw the lines now. If you want to use Pylaia, then, oh, sorry, P2Pala, not Pylaia, but P2Pala, the layout analysis, the layout recognition, then you should, you could opt for columns. If you then have a very stable sort of page with this pre-formatted table, then you could just calculate how many cells there are and then post-process them. But as I understood, Naverlab document understanding will be integrated in the coming months, and that's an artificial intelligence understanding of the content, and that could help with analysis of where certain sections are and where they end. So something I didn't know and learned recently at the trainer for training the trainer workshop were the horizontal, vertical, and line segmentation that you could add. So here you have, which is in the vertical segmentation bar, there's this button which is called H, and if you click on it, you get this red line, and you can basically put it anywhere and you create a new well, you basically divide the text region. And the same goes for the vertical one. You can just put in a vertical line, which might be nice if your document turns out to have columns and they were too close to each other and you needed to separate them. If I were to put that line in between here, it would actually copy the text to both of the sentences. So I would have text region 1, text region 2, and the same text would be copied because the computer wouldn't be able to decide yet which goes into which column. But if the computer did figure out there were separate lines, but it didn't create separate text regions, then you can still separate the text regions through this vertical line. If it's not that clear where or straightforward that is a straight line or it's a bit crooked or whatever, you can click on the line button and you can actually click and figure out where you want this text region to go. So it's not necessary to think in straight boxes in triangles. You could do triangles instead of squares. So that should give some more options, and especially if you have marginalia that are, well, somewhere written here and go a little bit through the text, you could actually do that with the line option to create this new text region. To remove small regions, which might be convenient if you're working with older text or pages that are a bit smudgy and have stains. Here again, you have this layout analysis text region kind of toolbar, and you have this mysterious little one with the 3 full stops. And if you click on it, this is the button to remove small text regions. The Transkribus uses this little button with the 3 full stops to add the new tools that have to do with the layout analysis. So you can click on remove small text regions, and then you get this little box that pops up, and you can fiddle around with the size of the little things on the page that you want to be removed. You can change that. First, you can run dry, which means that it makes an analysis of the page and how many little boxes it thinks it should remove. If you untick that box and then press OK, then it will definitely remove these texts. So another thing that I never mentioned before, but may prove itself very useful since Transkribus is going to the paid model, is creating a sample set. Why would you do that? Because it can create a representative set from your whole collection, and you can then create or use that to create a model that should sort of be representative for your whole collection. So where do you go? You go to the Document Manager button, and this new screen pops up, and you can click on whatever document you want. And you can click on certain pages. You see they have different colors, which indicates the phase it's in. So whether you transcribed it, whether it's done, whether it's ground truth. So what you can do is select a couple of pages and move it to the sample set. But you can also choose to create a sample set. It's just at random. You get this new screen, and it says here number of pages for each document, which is set on 4, but you can change it to 10 or whatever you like. And you figure out the document name, and with the options, you can select between random, systematic, or a number of pages per document. And whatever you like, just choose something. And if you have your whole collection of documents, what you want to use for your research or for your project, then you just say like, okay, I need 10 pages per document or whatever number you like. and it will figure out which pages it puts in your basic set. That basic set gets a new name, and if you transcribe that set, it should be, depending on what you choose, representative for your whole collection, and you could actually create a model based on that basic set and then apply that to your whole collection. So that could be useful if you want to, well, not randomly pick documents, and it should help you to make a more stable document because you were not the one figuring out which page should be selected. And since the computer is kind of brainless in this, it should be sort of representative. Then some very small other updates. Within Pylaia, there's this new little let's see. In newspapers, you have little horizontal lines that are read in characters. Depending on the size of the little regions, you could definitely try to remove them with the button of the remove small regions. So depending on the size, that could actually work. So here, small updates. First on Pylaia, they added a button, label existing transcriptions. So if you were very eager to start transcribing and you haven't had time to label your regions, but you figured out in the end that you actually kind of needed the labeling, you can now post-process that. So if you do that and you have created a model, you can actually apply that model over well, your existing text. So you can figure out whether you just want to rename the regions or the lines or whatever you want, but you can do that afterwards. Why would this be useful? Because if you have thought about naming the different sections of your page, so the different text regions may have different names, you could actually apply different models to different regions. So if you have column left, column right, you could then, when you are working with models, you could actually say that you want your model to work on just column left. So here I open up a document, and obviously I don't have these columns, but I'm just gonna show you where to work on this. If you select the HDR model, well, I just apply, I choose, and I can, let's see, where, okay, I just seem to be missing my own point here. It seems to have been gone for the moment. But the idea is that you could, yes, apparently it doesn't work for Pylaia yet, but it does work for HDR plus. You could here restrict on structured tags. So it's just HDR that currently uses that. So you could select paragraph or column left, column right, whatever you please, which could be interesting if you're working on text that have translations on the one page or on the one column and a translation in the other column. And it's interesting to see also straight away that you need to enable keyword spotting if you want to use that. So it's a button you now have to tick instead of that it's just being automatically applied. So if you want to do the structural tagging application for various, well, if you want to apply models for different structure tags, then you need to revert back to HDR+, but I'm quite sure that they will enable this for Pylaia as well. So then Transkribus is going to provide a read and search service. You don't need keyword spotting for the structured tags, but it's just that within one of the updates, when you apply a model, you need to figure out whether you want to be able to do keyword spotting afterwards. So those are two separate things. Structure tags and keyword spotting are two different things, but you need to figure out if you want to have your document enabled for keyword spotting later on. And when you run your model, you need to tick that box. The read and search service is something that you can currently use on the Transkribus server with your own account. But if you are running a small project, you might find it a hassle to figure out how to put all your data on a website or hire someone to do that for you. And Transkribus is going to offer that as a service. That means that they can enable, well, you pay them to put your data online in a searchable website. So it's based on IIIF, and you would then be able to link that to your project or whatever. But other people would be able to search your data without having the Transkribus account, because then they would need to register as well. There were some questions on the web version, and one of the things that will change is that depending on the rights you gave to a person to work with you on a certain folder, that will be made the same between the web version and the expert client. Currently, it was not possible to signal that pages were in ground truth when they were entirely corrected by a co-owner, for instance, who was working in the web client. But that will be changed so that this person will have the same rights whether or not he's working in the expert client. It's not yet there, but it will be there very soon. If you need special characters, use Unicode. So if you want to use the E with the little line, then you need to press Alt 133. Otherwise, you won't be able to get these special characters. Italics and bold are not yet possible within the interface. Someone asked a question about that. Mind you, even if they were to be available within the web interface, they weren't going to be integrated in a model. So even if you tag something as being bold, the model wouldn't learn from it. So it's not something that well, has that much benefit for training a model. So you should be thinking about whether you want that or not. Just a small thing, if you click on annotate, you need to click tick the box, and then you are able to right click and you get this option of all these options, whether it's a person's name or whether it's an image or whatever. Otherwise you won't be able to see that. So you can do superscript, you can do subscript, you can do underline and scratch out, but you can't do bold or italics. Then there is this option of masking. They call it blackening, but it's a term that could potentially be changed. One small question on the annotation here. How can you change this? You would need to ask the read team to add something here if you need another type of annotation here. Masking is called blackening, a term that is probably not well chosen, but it means masking a little bit of text. You can select it and then you can draw a box over a word that you don't want to be shown to the bigger audience, given the GDPR, for instance, that you want to leave out the names. But be aware, it's just a layer you put over the image. It doesn't remove, it doesn't cut a hole into the image, so to say, which means that within the transcription, it remains. And if you are exporting it, for instance, in XML, then the text will still be shown. So keep that in mind, please. If you do export it just as a PDF, but then again, whether you make it searchable or not is up to you. It would be blackened, it would be masked, so you wouldn't see it in the export of the PDF, but in any textual kind of well, textual exports, you would still be able to see the text that was originally below this masking. So if you want to see which bits you have masked, you can click on the eye, and you can then render blackenings, and then you can actually see which bits and pieces have been masked. There was a question about when does this service of read and search become available. I'm quite sure you can actually already request it. It should be available very soon. And yes, that's what they did for the Finland archive, but also for the notarial archives of Amsterdam. And there are quite a few examples already where they made that service available for keyword spotting through the text. So it might be interesting if you don't want to build an entire new website, or if you just have a small project. And they claim that the price would be very competitive and likely cheaper than if you hire the service from someone else who needs to build an entire new website, simply because the servers of IIIF and the servers with the data are already in place in Innsbruck, so it should be easy to implement it from their side. So that's basically all the information I have for now. I'm stopping the recording.